I'm standing beside my mother's casket, tears streaming silently down my face, and my father walks right past me to comfort my sister, who's sobbing loudly in the front row. Again. It's the third time in the last hour he's done this. The third time he's looked through me like I'm invisible, while rushing to tend to Lindsay's theatrical breakdown. My mother is dead. She died 4 days ago, after a brutal 18-month battle with cancer. I was with her when she took her last breath. I held her hand. I whispered that I loved her. Lindsay was at a spa retreat in Arizona, her phone turned off for digital wellness. But somehow, I'm the ghost at this funeral, and she's the grieving daughter everyone's worried about. My name is Morgan. I'm 34 years old, and I just buried the only person in my family who ever really saw me. My mother's death didn't just leave a hole in my life. It removed the only buffer between me and a family dynamic so toxic I'd been avoiding confronting it for decades. But standing there, watching my father coddle my 31-year-old sister while she wailed into his shoulder, something inside me finally broke. The truth was going to come out. One way or another, everyone was going to know exactly what kind of daughter Lindsay had been, and what kind of daughter I'd been. Let me go back, because this moment, this funeral, this performance, this final insult, it was built on a foundation of 34 years of being second place to my sister's drama. Lindsay has always been the center of attention. Even as kids, she knew how to work a room, how to cry at exactly the right moment, how to make every situation about her needs and her feelings. My parents, especially my dad, ate it up. She'd scrape her knee and it was an emergency. Ice packs, bandages, extra hugs, a new toy to make her feel better. I'd break my arm, and my parents would drive me to urgent care with the radio on, talking about their workday, only remembering to ask if I was okay when we were pulling into the parking lot. That set the pattern for everything that followed. In high school, Lindsay struggled with her grades. My parents hired tutors, attended every parent-teacher conference, fought with teachers they felt weren't being understanding enough. They redecorated her room to minimize distractions. They bought her a new laptop for her learning style. I made straight A's without help. I got into the Honor Society, won academic awards, scored in the 98th percentile on my SATs. My parents said, "Good job," and moved on to discussing Lindsay's latest drama class production. When I got accepted to a good state university with a scholarship, they took me out to dinner at Olive Garden. When Lindsay got accepted to a mediocre private college, after my parents hired a college consultant and essay coach, they threw her a party with 50 people and a custom cake. The pattern was clear. Lindsay's achievements, no matter how small or assisted, were momentous. Mine, no matter how significant or hard-earned, were expected. But it was when my mom got sick that the true extent of the imbalance became impossible to ignore. Mom was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer in March, 2 years ago. The prognosis was grim, 12 to 18 months, maybe. We were all devastated. Within a week, I had reorganized my work schedule to work remotely twice a week so I could drive to my parents' house and help. I went to every doctor's appointment I could make. I researched treatment options. I set up a meal train. I coordinated with insurance companies and pharmacies. Lindsay posted about it on social media. Long, emotional posts about how hard it was to watch her mother suffer, how she was broken by the news, how everyone should cherish their loved ones. She'd share quotes about grief and loss, accompanied by throwback photos of her and Mom. The posts got hundreds of likes. People commented telling her how strong she was, how brave. She visited Mom maybe once a month, and when she did, the visits lasted an hour or two before she claimed she was too emotionally overwhelmed to stay longer. I was there 3 times a week, minimum. Sometimes more. I helped Mom to the bathroom when she was too weak to walk alone. I cleaned up when the chemo made her sick. I sat with her during her worst moments, the pain, the fear, the indignity of a body betraying itself. My dad knew this. He saw it happening. But when relatives would call to check in, he'd tell them about how hard Lindsay was taking everything, how worried he was about her, how this was especially difficult for her because she was so sensitive. And Morgan's handling it, he'd add, almost as an afterthought. Morgan, she's always so strong. Strong. That word again. The word that meant we don't have to worry about her. The word that meant she doesn't deserve our attention. Mom knew, though. Mom saw everything. During one of my visits, about 6 months before she died, we were sitting together in her bedroom. She was having a good day, pain managed, nausea under control. We were just talking, the kind of rambling conversation you have when time feels both infinite and desperately limited. I worry about you, she said suddenly. Me? I'm fine, Mom. Don't worry about me. That's exactly what I'm worried about. She squeezed my hand. You're always fine. You've always been fine. And your father and Lindsay have taken terrible advantage of that. I didn't know what to say. We'd never talked about this explicitly before. They take you for granted, she continued. They always have. And I let it happen. I should have fought harder for you, insisted that you got equal attention, equal recognition. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. Mom, it's not your fault. It is, though, at least partially. I saw what was happening, and I didn't stop it. I told myself you were resilient, that you didn't need the same kind of attention Lindsay did. But that wasn't fair to you. You deserved more. I was crying by then. I just wanted someone to notice. That's all I ever wanted, she said. I noticed everything. The awards you won that nobody celebrated. The times you needed help but didn't ask, because you knew Lindsay had already claimed all the emotional resources. The way you made yourself small so she could be big. She pulled me closer, her frail arms somehow still comforting. Promise me something, she said. When I'm gone, don't let them erase what you've done. Don't let Lindsay rewrite history. Don't let your father forget who was actually here. I promise, I whispered. That conversation haunted me through the last months of her life, because I could see exactly what was coming. I knew that when she died, Lindsay would make it about her. I knew my dad would enable it. I knew I'd end up being the support system while receiving none of the support. And I was right. Mom entered hospice in late April. The end was close. I took a leave of absence from work to be with her full-time. I slept in a chair beside her bed. I monitored her pain levels, adjusted her medication with the nurse's guidance, kept her comfortable. Lindsay came for a weekend. She took selfies with Mom, who was barely conscious, and posted them with captions about treasuring every moment. Then she left because she had a work commitment that turned out to be a concert. My father divided his time between his job, the house, and the hospice facility. When he was there, he'd sit with Mom, but he was uncomfortable with the medical aspects. He couldn't handle the morphine administration or the oxygen adjustments. He couldn't deal with the physical realities of dying. So I did it. All of it. Mom died on a Tuesday morning at 6:47 a.m. I'd been awake all night, watching her breathing become more labored, knowing it was close. My dad was at home sleeping. Lindsay was in Arizona at a wellness retreat she'd booked weeks earlier, her phone off. When the moment came, it was just me and Mom and a hospice nurse. I held her hand and told her I loved her and that it was okay to let go. She took 3 more breaths, and then she was gone. The nurse gave me time alone with her body. I sat there for an hour, just holding her hand, feeling it grow cold, trying to memorize every detail of her face before the funeral home transformed her into something else. Then I called my dad. He broke down on the phone. I comforted him, told him it was peaceful, told him I'd handle the funeral arrangements if he wasn't ready. Then I tried to call Lindsay. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I left a message asking her to call me urgently. I texted her. I sent her an email. 6 hours later, she finally called back. I told her Mom had died. She screamed. A genuine, piercing scream. Then she started sobbing, hyperventilating, saying she couldn't believe it. This wasn't real. How could this happen? I waited for her to calm down enough to speak. The funeral will probably be Saturday, I said. I'll send you details as soon as we have them finalized. I should have been there, she wailed. I should have been there. Oh my God, I wasn't there when she died. How am I supposed to live with that? I thought about saying, you could have been there. You chose a spa retreat over your dying mother. But I didn't. I just said, she knew you loved her. Did she? Lindsay's voice pitched higher. Did she really? Or did she die thinking I abandoned her? She didn't think that, I lied. Because the truth was, Mom had asked about Lindsay several times in those final days. Where's your sister? She'd whisper, confused. I thought she was coming. She'll be here soon, Mom, I'd say, even though I knew she wouldn't. The funeral was scheduled for Saturday, 4 days after Mom's death. Those 4 days were a blur of phone calls, arrangements, decisions. I met with the funeral director. I chose the casket, the flowers, the music. I wrote the obituary. I contacted relatives. I picked out the outfit Mom would be buried in. My dad was too distraught to help with most of it. Lindsay was flying back from Arizona and needed time to process. So I did it alone. Again. Family started arriving Friday. Aunts and uncles I hadn't seen in years, cousins with their kids, Mom's best friend from college, my father's elderly parents. Everyone was sad. Everyone was kind. Everyone offered condolences. And everyone asked the same question. How's Lindsay holding up? Not, how are you doing, Morgan? Not, this must be so hard. You were with her constantly. Just, where's Lindsay? And, is she okay? And, I'm so worried about her. I smiled and said Lindsay was devastated. She'd be there tomorrow. She was having a hard time. Nobody seemed to notice that I might be having a hard time too. Lindsay arrived Saturday morning, 2 hours before the funeral. She came with suitcases full of clothes because she didn't know what would feel right to wear. She'd brought 3 different black dresses, 2 pairs of shoes, multiple outfit options. She settled on a dress that was frankly too elegant for a funeral, more cocktail party than memorial service. She did her makeup carefully, made sure her hair was perfect. I want to look good for Mom, she said, studying herself in the mirror. She'd want me to represent her well. I was wearing a simple black dress I'd bought at Target 3 days earlier because I'd been too busy handling arrangements to think about what I was going to wear. My hair was in a ponytail. I had circles under my eyes from not sleeping. We got to the funeral home an hour early for family viewing. This was the time when close relatives could see Mom before the public funeral, say private goodbyes. Lindsay walked up to the casket and immediately collapsed into sobs. Loud, body-racking sobs. My dad rushed to her side, wrapped his arms around her, held her while she wailed. I stood to the side, tears running down my face, and nobody looked at me. My aunt, Mom's sister, noticed. She came over and hugged me. You okay, sweetie? I'm okay, I said automatically. No, you're not, she said gently. Stop saying you're okay. That small moment of being seen almost broke me. I had to excuse myself to the bathroom to cry, where nobody would see. The funeral was packed. Mom had been a teacher for 30 years before retiring, and dozens of former students came. Neighbors came. Friends from her book club and her garden society and her volunteer work came. The funeral home was standing room only. The service was beautiful. The pastor talked about Mom's kindness, her dedication to education, her love for her family. Mom's best friend gave a eulogy that made everyone laugh and cry. My dad said a few words, breaking down twice. Then Lindsay stood up to speak. This wasn't planned. She just stood up during the open reflection time and walked to the front. "I need to say something," she announced. Her voice was thick with tears. "My mother was my everything. She was my best friend, my confidant, my rock. I don't know how I'm going to live without her." She paused for dramatic effect. People were watching her raptly. "She called me the day before she died," Lindsay continued. This was a lie. Mom was barely conscious the day before she died, completely nonverbal. "And she told me she loved me. She told me she was proud of me. She told me to be strong." More lies. Mom hadn't spoken to Lindsay in over a week. "I promised her I would be strong," Lindsay said, her voice breaking. "I promised her I would make her proud. And I'm going to keep that promise, even though my heart is shattered into a million pieces." She was full-on sobbing now. People in the audience were crying with her. My dad was nodding, tears streaming down his face. "Mom, if you can hear me," Lindsay said, looking up at the ceiling. "I love you. I will always love you. Thank you for everything you gave me. Thank you for being the best mother anyone could ask for." She walked back to her seat. People reached out to touch her arm, to squeeze her hand, to whisper condolences. She collapsed into the pew, her shoulders shaking. I sat 3 feet away from her, my own tears dried on my cheeks, invisible. At the reception after the burial, it got worse. People swarmed Lindsay. They hugged her, told her how moving her words were, told her they were praying for her. They asked if she was eating, if she was sleeping, if she had support. My dad stayed by her side constantly. When she got overwhelmed, which she did, repeatedly, always at maximum dramatic impact, he'd usher her to a quiet corner, bring her water, sit with her until she felt strong enough to return. I worked the room like I was hosting a networking event. I greeted people, accepted condolences, made sure everyone had food and drinks. I introduced relatives who didn't know each other. I answered questions about Mom's final days. And then my Aunt Carol asked me, in front of a group of relatives, "So, were you with your mom at the end? Or was it just your dad?" "I was with her," I said. "Dad was at home sleeping. Mom died early in the morning." "Oh," Carol looked confused. I thought, well, Lindsay made it sound like she'd been very present through everything. "Lindsay was in Arizona at a spa retreat," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too calm, too flat. Her phone was off. Mom died while Lindsay was getting a hot stone massage. The group went quiet. A few people glanced at Lindsay, who was across the room, surrounded by concerned well-wishers. "But Lindsay just said," Carol started. "Lindsay wasn't there," I repeated. "I was there every day for 18 months. I took a leave of absence from work to care for Mom full-time for the last 6 weeks. I was the one holding her hand when she died." Carol's expression shifted. "Oh, honey, I didn't realize." "Nobody does," I said. "Everyone's too busy worrying about Lindsay." I excused myself and walked outside. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to not be in a room full of people who saw my sister as the tragic, grieving daughter while I remained invisible. I found a bench behind the funeral home and sat down. My hands were shaking. The anger I'd been suppressing for days, for years, was rising up, hot and bitter in my throat. My Aunt Carol followed me out. "Morgan, I'm so sorry. I should have asked, should have checked in. Your sister is just so visible with her emotions. She's good at performing," I said. "She always has been. And you've always been the strong one," Carol said gently. "No," I said. I've always been the one everyone ignores, because I don't make enough noise. Carol sat down beside me. Tell me the truth about these last months. So I did. I told her about being there 3 times a week while Lindsay posted on Instagram. I told her about the doctor's appointments, the middle-of-the-night phone calls, the bodily fluids and pain management, and watching someone you love disappear slowly. I told her about Lindsay's monthly visits that lasted 2 hours before she claimed emotional exhaustion. I told her about the spa retreat, the turned-off phone, the 6-hour delay before she even knew Mom had died. I told her about Mom's apology, about Mom asking me to not let them erase what I'd done. Carol listened to all of it, her face growing more upset with every detail. When I finished, she said, "People need to know this." "They don't care," I said. "They care about Lindsay's performance. That's all they see." "Then make them see the truth," Carol said. "Your mother asked you to not let them rewrite history, so don't." I looked at her. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting," she said carefully, "that you tell everyone what you just told me. Not meanly, not vindictively, just the truth." At my mother's funeral reception? When else will everyone be gathered together? When else will Lindsay's performance be this fresh in everyone's mind? When else will you have the chance to set the record straight? She was right, and somewhere in my grief and exhaustion and rage, I made a decision. I stood up, smoothed my dress, took a deep breath. "Let's go," I said. We walked back inside. The reception was still going strong. Lindsay was holding court near the photo display of Mom, tissues in hand, recounting some memory that had people dabbing at their eyes. I walked to the front of the room. Someone had set up a small microphone for the eulogies earlier. I turned it on. The feedback squeal got everyone's attention. "Sorry to interrupt," I said. My voice was shaking but audible. "I just wanted to thank everyone for coming today. Mom would have been so moved to see how many lives she touched." People nodded, smiled. My dad looked pleased that I was finally saying something. "I also wanted to share a little bit about Mom's final months," I continued. "Since I spent them with her, I thought it might bring people comfort to know how she spent her last days." Lindsay's eyes narrowed. She knew something was coming. For the last 18 months, Mom fought incredibly hard. She went through aggressive chemo, multiple hospitalizations, countless treatments that left her sick and weak. Through it all, she maintained her grace, her humor, her love for everyone in her life. I paused. This was the moment. The moment I either backed down or told the truth. I thought of Mom's hand growing cold in mine. I thought of 18 months of being invisible. I thought of Lindsay's lies during the eulogy. I thought of my promise. "I was privileged to be with her through most of that journey," I said. "I reorganized my life to be there 3 times a week, minimum. I went to every oncology appointment I could make. I learned to manage her pain medication, to help her when she was too weak to move on her own, to sit with her through the worst of it." People were really listening now. I could feel the energy in the room shifting. When Mom entered hospice 6 weeks ago, I took a leave of absence from work to be with her full-time. I slept beside her bed. I made sure she was comfortable, that she was never alone, that she knew how deeply she was loved. I looked directly at Lindsay. Her face was pale. Mom died on Tuesday at 6:47 in the morning. I was holding her hand. The hospice nurse was there. It was as peaceful as death can be. Mom's last conscious words, spoken the day before, were, "I love you." She was talking to me. My voice cracked. I took a breath, steadied myself. My sister Lindsay was not there. Lindsay was at a wellness retreat in Arizona. Her phone was off. I left her messages, sent texts, sent an email. She didn't respond for 6 hours. The room was completely silent now. Every eye was on me. Lindsay visited Mom approximately once a month during her illness. Those visits typically lasted 1 to 2 hours. That was her choice, and I'm not judging it. People grieve differently. People cope differently. I paused. But I am judging the lies Lindsay told during her eulogy today. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My dad stood up. Morgan, that's enough. No, Dad, it's not enough. It's not nearly enough. My voice was stronger now. Lindsay said Mom called her the day before she died. That's impossible. Mom was nonverbal for the last 36 hours of her life. She didn't call anyone. Lindsay stood up too, tears streaming down her face. How dare you? I dare because Mom asked me to, I said. She asked me not to let you rewrite history. She asked me not to let you erase what I did, what I sacrificed, what I gave to make sure she didn't die alone. You're being cruel, Lindsay said. At Mom's funeral, you're being unspeakably cruel. I'm being honest, I corrected. There's a difference. You've been performing grief all day while I've been living it for 18 months. You stood up there and lied about being Mom's rock, about being her best friend, about being there for her. You weren't. I was. My dad tried to intervene again. Morgan, your sister is devastated. We're both devastated, I shot back. But only one of us is getting comforted. Only one of us is getting attention and concern and support, just like always. I turned back to the crowd. I'm sorry this is uncomfortable. I'm sorry this isn't what anyone expected at a funeral reception. But I made a promise to my mother, and I'm keeping it. The truth is this. I was the daughter who showed up. Every day, every difficult moment, every single time it mattered. I looked at Lindsay again. She was crying, real tears this time, not performance. You're not a bad person for not being able to handle it, I said to her. But don't stand up at her funeral and lie about who you were to her. Don't take credit for what I did. Don't make her death about your performance when her life was about my presence. I turned the microphone off, set it down. The room was still silent. Then Aunt Carol started clapping. Just a slow, steady clap. One of my cousins joined in, then another relative, then another. Not everyone clapped. My dad looked stricken. Lindsay had her face in her hands, but enough people clapped that I knew the truth had landed. I knew people heard it. I knew I'd kept my promise to Mom. I walked out of the reception. I got in my car, and I drove home. The fallout was immediate and intense. My phone started ringing within minutes. My dad, furious and hurt. Other relatives, some supportive, some horrified. Lindsay's friends, defending her. My own friends, who'd heard what happened through the grapevine, telling me I was brave. I turned my phone off and went to bed. I slept for 14 hours straight, the first real sleep I'd had in weeks. When I finally looked at my phone the next day, there were over 60 messages. I responded to the supportive ones and ignored the rest. My dad left a voicemail saying we needed to talk, that what I'd done was unforgivable, that I'd humiliated Lindsay in front of the entire family. Lindsay sent a long, rambling text about how I'd destroyed her and ruined Mom's funeral and shown everyone how jealous and bitter I was. I didn't respond to either of them. Aunt Carol called. You okay? I don't know, I admitted. I meant what I said, but I didn't plan to say it at the reception. It just came out. Good, she said. It needed to come out. Your mother would be proud. Dad and Lindsay hate me now. They're embarrassed, Carol corrected. There's a difference. They got exposed in front of everyone, and they can't handle it. Give them time. But I didn't want to give them time. I wanted distance. I wanted space from the family dynamic that had made me invisible for 34 years. I went back to work 2 weeks later. My boss was understanding, told me to take whatever time I needed, but I needed normalcy. I needed something that wasn't grief and family drama. My coworkers were kind. They asked how I was doing. They brought me coffee and lunch and gave me space when I needed it. One of them, a woman named Jessica, who'd lost her own mother a few years earlier, took me out for drinks and just listened while I told her everything. "You did the right thing," she said when I finished. "Painful, but right." "It doesn't feel right," I admitted. "It feels like I blew up my family." "Your family was already broken," she said gently. "You just made the cracks visible." She was right, and over the following weeks, I started to realize something. I didn't miss my dad or Lindsay. I missed my mom. I missed the one person who'd seen me, valued me, appreciated what I gave. But I didn't miss the people who'd taken me for granted for decades. 3 months after the funeral, my dad reached out. He wanted to meet for coffee. I almost said no, but curiosity won out. He looked tired when I arrived at the cafe, older. We ordered our drinks and sat in uncomfortable silence for a minute. "I owe you an apology," he said finally. "A big one." I waited. "You were right, about all of it. Lindsay and we've taken advantage of your strength for years. We've made you invisible while focusing all our energy on her. And at your mother's funeral, when you were grieving just as much as anyone, we ignored you completely," I said. "You did." "Your mom tried to tell me," he continued. "For years, she tried. She'd say I was being unfair to you, that I needed to pay more attention, that you deserved better. I didn't listen. I thought she was overreacting." "She wasn't." "No," he agreed. "She wasn't. And now she's gone, and I can't fix that. But I can try to fix this, if you'll let me." I looked at my father, at this man who'd walked past me countless times to comfort my sister, who'd celebrated her mediocre accomplishments while ignoring my significant ones, who'd let me become invisible because I didn't demand attention the way Lindsay did. "What does fixing it look like?" I asked. "I don't know," he admitted. "Therapy, maybe, both individual and family. Actually listening when you talk, making sure you know I see you, that I appreciate what you do. Stopping myself from always rushing to Lindsay first. That would be a start," I said. We talked for another hour. It wasn't a perfect conversation. There were moments of defensiveness, moments where he tried to justify his past behavior. But there were also moments of genuine remorse and acknowledgement. When we parted ways, I felt something I hadn't expected: hope. Small, fragile hope that maybe the relationship could be repaired. Lindsay was a different story. She didn't reach out for 6 months. When she finally did, it was a text. "I'm sorry I wasn't there for Mom. You were right." That was it. No acknowledgement of the funeral confrontation. No discussion of the pattern of favoritism. Just those 2 sentences. I didn't respond immediately. I thought about it for days. And then I texted back. "Thanks for saying that. I'm not ready to have a relationship right now. Maybe someday, but not now." She responded, "I understand." It's been a year since Mom died. A year since that funeral, that confrontation, that moment when I finally refused to be invisible anymore. My relationship with my dad is better. Not perfect, but better. We meet for coffee once a month. He's in therapy, working through his patterns of behavior. He asks about my life now, really asks, not just perfunctory questions before moving on to discuss Lindsay. He's not perfect. Sometimes he still defaults to worrying about Lindsay first. But he catches himself now. He apologizes. He's trying. Lindsay and I aren't in contact. We've exchanged a few texts, birthday wishes, holiday greetings. But we don't have a relationship. Maybe we will someday. Maybe we won't. I'm okay with either outcome. What I learned from all of this is that grief reveals truth. It strips away the polite fictions we maintain, the roles we play, the lies we tell ourselves about our families. My mother's death forced me to confront something I'd been avoiding my entire life. I was invisible in my family, not because I was inherently forgettable, but because I didn't demand attention. And my family took advantage of that. The funeral confrontation wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even really about Lindsay, despite how it must have felt to her. It was about keeping a promise to my mother. It was about refusing to let my presence, my sacrifice, my love be erased in favor of someone else's performance. It was about being seen. Finally, completely, undeniably seen. Was it the right thing to do? I don't know. People have strong opinions. Some relatives still think I was cruel, that I should have waited, that I aired family business publicly at the worst possible time. But most people, especially the ones who'd watched the dynamic for years, they understood that sometimes the truth needs to be spoken, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Because the alternative is continuing the lie, continuing to be invisible, continuing to let someone else take credit for your work, your love, your presence. And I'd done that for 34 years. I wasn't going to do it anymore. Mom died knowing I'd been there for her. That's what matters most. She died knowing she was loved fiercely and consistently. She died knowing her favorite daughter, and yes, I was her favorite. She told me so in the end, had given everything to make her comfortable. The rest of my family eventually had to reckon with that truth. Not because I wanted to hurt them, but because I wanted to honor her. And in honoring her, I finally honored myself. That's the lesson I want people to understand. You can't wait for others to see your worth. You can't be silent in the hope that eventually someone will notice your sacrifices. You have to speak up. You have to demand to be seen. Even if it's uncomfortable. Even if it's painful. Even if it means confronting people you love with truths they don't want to hear. Your presence matters. Your work matters. Your grief matters. You matter. Don't let anyone, not your family, not anyone, convince you otherwise.